students? Do you study abroad? Anybody study abroad here?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great program, right? 300,000 of you every year, usually in your junior year, immerse yourself in a study abroad program. You go to China and Australia and France. You immerse yourself in the culture. You learn the language. You learn people's quirks. All so you can successfully navigate on that global stage. Important? Absolutely. But I would posture, at this divisive time in our own history, it is perhaps more important to immerse yourself in American culture, as in study America. Indiana, West Virginia, Ohio, Texas, South Carolina, Oregon, Washington State. I know, doesn't quite have the same je ne sais quoi, doesn't quite have the same excitement, but I guarantee you will find out something much more important. You will find that we, as Americans, are not so different after all. If you still don't get where I'm coming from, let's play a word association game. When I say Midwest or Midwestern, what pops into your mind? Back in the day, if you lived on the East Coast or the West Coast, friendly and hardworking might come to mind. But today, I would guess that the words that pop into your head when I say Midwest are much less complimentary. I know. I'm a native Ohioan. I've lived in New York City, and now I live in Los Angeles. My husband is the president here at LMU. I'm the first lady. So I ask our students that question all the time. I graduated from Kent State in Kent, Ohio. I ask students there how they feel about Californians. So the intel I've gathered for this talk comes from those amazing, brilliant, honest students at those institutions. But let's start here in Los Angeles, California. Last year, I went down to the Starbucks and I met a graduating senior from LMU named Hira. And over a latte, I asked her that question. When I say Ohio, what goes through your mind, Hira? What do you and your friends talk about? And she looked at me and she said, do you want me to be honest? And I said, oh. I said, yes. I said, hit me. I'm braced, I'm ready, just tell me, be honest. She said, okay. She said, when me and my friends talk about Ohio, the words that come to mind are very conservative, white, racist, and cheese. Now the cheese part confused me because I think she's getting like Ohio mixed up with Wisconsin and the cheeseheads. I don't know. But the number one phrase that came to Hira's mind when she thought about Ohio was Trump or Trumpland. And let's face it, Trumpland or Trump has become an all-encompassing term for all of those awful descriptors above, right? But the most disturbing thing that Hira told me that day at Starbucks was this. She said, when I think of America, I think of the East Coast and the West Coast. And everything in between is like a foreign country. Everything in between is like a foreign country. Why? Because in part Ohio is Trump land? That makes me sad because that reduces all Ohioans, all Midwesterners to a stereotype. And it is a stereotype. I'm going to give you a little bit of dose of reality now. During the election of 2016, among the most popular candidates, 54% of Ohioans voted for Mr. Trump, and 46% voted for Mrs. Clinton. Put another way, if you threw a party and you invited 100 people, 54 would have voted for Mr. Trump, and 46 would have voted for Mrs. Clinton. That's a difference of 8 people. 8. Let me put it another way. If 5 of the people on the Trump side would gravitate over to the Clinton side, Ohio's red state status would turn blue. Now, to me, that doesn't say Ohio is Trump land or Clinton land. To me, that says Ohio is America. Yet students from my alma mater in Kent State and Kent, Ohio here, they're from Trump land all the time. I talked with Ava last year. She said, I'm from Cleveland. Cuyahoga County voted for Mrs. Clinton by a wide margin. But people in the Midwest, they stereotype too, right? Ask an Ohioan how they feel about Californians, and you'll hear shallow, plastic, hippy-dippy, liberal to the point of insanity. I talked with Josie, who's a graduate student at LMU. She's also from southeastern Ohio. She tells me her friends think all Californians are pot-smoking liberals. California, they tell her, is like a foreign country named La La Land. I don't blame young people for stereotyping. I blame my generation, the older generation, and the partisan media for reducing all Americans to cartoon cardboard cutouts and all states to solid monochromes. Study America. I know what you're thinking. I don't want to go to parts of America. There are mean people there. Or parts of America would make me really uncomfortable. I agree. But isn't part of the reason you study abroad is to put yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can become comfortable, learn to become comfortable so you can navigate on that global stage? Sometimes being uncomfortable is a good thing. And I'm just going to share one example from my own life that illustrates that. In 2015, I was a correspondent for CNN, and I also anchored a show. And CNN sent me to Baltimore, Maryland, to cover the riots there. A young man named Freddie Gray was thrown into the back of a police paddy wagon, and he died. People in Freddie Gray's neighborhood, they thought it was because of police brutality, and things became very tense in the city of Baltimore. Things became violent. At one point, people in Freddie Gray's neighborhood looted the only drugstore serving the community, and they burned it to the ground. You can't believe how hard it was to get anybody to do business in that neighborhood, and these people burned the drugstore to the ground. Well, I went on the air that day, and I said, can you believe it? Those idiots burned down the only drugstore in this community. They've hurt their own neighborhood. What idiots, I said. Well, later that night, Baltimore police were going to institute a 10 o'clock curfew because they wanted people off the streets because it was that violent. Well, nobody knew what was going to happen. So I called my team around me, and we got outfitted. I had my flak jacket on, I had my gas mask, I had a bodyguard, and we went to ground zero to wait to see what would happen when 10 o'clock rolled around. There were hundreds of people on the streets, hundreds. And not very many of those people looked like me. And I'll be honest with you, just as honest as those students were with me, I felt uncomfortable. I was afraid. I was a little afraid. But we stood there, waiting to see what would happen. At some point in the evening, a young African-American woman and her boyfriend approached me. And this young African-American woman got right up into my face, and she said, "It's you!" I said, yeah, I'm Carol Costello from CNN. She goes, yeah, it's you. You called us idiots on the air. I heard you on television. You called us idiots. I said, well, I didn't call you an idiot. I called the people who burned down the drugstore an idiot. And she looked at me and she said, what do you know about my life? You think I could make an appointment at the mayor's office and all my problems would be solved? Look around my neighborhood. What do you see? You think anybody really cares about me? I had nothing to say, because she was right. We talked for a long time. And I don't know at what point in the conversation that things became emotional, but they did. We started to cry. We stood in the street with those hundreds of people around us, and we just cried. And I promised her that the next day on the air, I would tell her side of the story. She said, thank you, and she melted away into the crowd. I kept my word. The next day on the air, I did tell her side of the story. Do I still think the people who burned down the drugstore were wrong? Of course I do. But I get it. I got it. My mind was opened. Sometimes being uncomfortable is a good thing. Ask an Ohioan to describe themselves, and they might say, oh, we're friendly and we're hardworking, and oh, God, we're boring. We say that, but we don't really mean it. I often text with 3 of my friends from Columbus, Ohio. I've known them for 30 years. The other day, my friend Kim, she texted all of us, and she said, hey, I'm making my mom some oatmeal cookies, and then I'm going to bring her to church. And my friend Liz chimed in, and she said, oh yeah. And then my friend Kim added one more thing. She goes, yeah, I'm baking oatmeal cookies, I'm bringing my mom to church. God, I'm so boring, I'm from Ohio, right? My friend Liz chimed in, and she said, Listen, Kim, if you were doing that in California, you'd be making your mom pot brownies. And, we all text laugh, ha, 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 ha. But I was intrigued by this exchange, right? I said, seriously, guys, how would you describe Midwestern culture? Because I gotta tell you, people on the coast think we're kind of dumb. Oh, that Midwest modesty melted away. My friend Marcy, she's a single mother, and she owns a very successful advertising business. She said, really, we're dumb. Because we're family-oriented? Because some of us are religious? Because we can buy a nice home in a nice neighborhood and actually be able to afford it? Because we can see the same concerts you do without sitting in traffic for 5 hours? Now, I would say, minus the traffic thing and the affordable housing, that people in Los Angeles might describe themselves the same way. Family-oriented? You bet. Religious? Well, I am standing here giving this talk at LMU, a Jesuit institution. There's a chapel right over the way, and on Sunday, I've been there. It's full of people. See, my friend Kim baking her mom oatmeal cookies and bringing her mom to church isn't an Ohio thing. It's not a Midwestern thing. It's an American thing. I mean, substitute the oatmeal cookies for what your family likes best. Substitute church for synagogue. But you get it, right? It's not a Midwestern thing. It's an American thing. I've lived in 13 different cities and towns. I visited nearly every state in the nation, and I have never felt like I was in a foreign country. I went to Beijing, China a couple years ago. Yeah, I felt like I was in a foreign country then. Seriously, study. I'm not saying don't study abroad, because I know that's important, and you should do it. But study America. Seriously, go to Michigan. Do you realize that Michigan has 300,000 acres of sand dunes? 300,000 acres of sand dunes, Michigan. Go to New Orleans and immerse yourself into everything Cajun. Go to Charleston, South Carolina, and visit the Slavery Museum. It is an emotional punch in the gut, but I guarantee you will learn that Charleston is a city trying to understand the evils of its past so it can become a city of the future. Go to Baltimore. Don't go to the dangerous parts. Every city has a dangerous part. We live in Los Angeles, for goodness sake. Go to Baltimore. Walk the same streets that Frederick Douglass did and Edgar Allan Poe, and then sit down and have the best crab cake you've ever had in your life. Go to Oakland and San Diego and, I don't know, Fresno. 3 different cultures, all within the same state. Yes, you will find that Americans have their differences, but I'm telling you, we're more the same than you think we are. Savvy students know this. I talked with Ken at Kent State last year. He said, you know what? I've immersed myself into Sichuan province in China, but I've never immersed myself into Charleston, now South Carolina. Maybe it's time I did that. But I think Hayden Tanabe, who was student body president here at LMU last year, put it best. And he used a borrowed quote to do it. And I'm going to read it to you right now, because I carry it with me all the time. When the heart is touched by direct experience, the mind may be challenged to change. Amen, Hayden. Amen.